Welcome to episode 5 of the Resolve to Read podcast, where we help you read through the entire Bible. Today's guest is Jenna Height, and we're excited to bring this podcast to you.
Who are you listening to? Close your eyes, take a chance on my voice. My word will light the way for you when it's dark and there's no sense moving. Move at the sound of my voice. Move by the light, make a choice. Listen to my voice. I got something to say.
And this is Jennifer. I'm here with my husband, Aaron,
Hello.
And our guest, Jenna Height.
Hey.
And we're in our studios in Spokane, Washington. So this is a treat to be here in our studio here.
Yeah, are we making this a ongoing thing where because this is like the second or third one where we've not been, well, at least the second one where we've been out of town recording this.
Yeah, so it's fun doing that. And so Jenna Height is actually my daughter. So this is a family affair.
She's
that we
my
have
daughter
going
too.
On.
I'm both of their daughters together to set the record straight.
And she is our expert theologian today. She is a minister in Spokane, Washington, working on her Master's of Divinity. And so we're so excited. She's going to give us all the answers today.
Yeah, I actually know everything about the Bible, so I totally expect to be able to answer every single question that you might
And
have.
that's amazing. How old are you now?
I'm 23.
23. Wow, that's fantastic. Hey, actually, Jenna, you
Do you
are.
want to know how old I am?
We talked about
Why did
that
you ask her and not me?
We talked about that last
Do you want to know how old you are?
We talked about that last week. We're not going there anymore. Anyways, so actually, Jenna, you have been an inspiration in my life. You, right out of high school, went to college, Malone in Ohio, to get your Bible degree. Immediately found a paid ministry position, and that's awesome. And then your second ministry position here in Spokane. Very far away from me, but that's another story. And you're working on your Master's of Divinity. Now, I have taken my cue from you. I said, if my 23-year-old daughter can do this, I think maybe God has a right to expect more from me. And so that's why I am also working on my Master's in Biblical Leadership, not a Master's of Divinity. So how many books are you reading on average each semester?
Yeah, they work based on trimesters, and I probably am averaging at 20 books. I take 4 courses, but they're not, you take your courses at such a fast pace. Like, I think you've got like 5-week courses. To me, that's insane. I'm looking at more I'm looking at more like 13 or 15 week trimesters. So yeah, it's not as bad.
So we are actually, before we get started in our readings from this week, so you may not be aware, we have readers that are reading along in the Bible with us. And we're reading...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know a little bit about what you do with Resolve to Read. I think it's great.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm glad you think that's great. That's awesome. So we have lots of readers out there. Hello, readers. We're so glad you're reading and that you've joined us today. Primarily, I wanted to focus on our readings in the book of Exodus because I asked your dad if he thought you would be willing to do this podcast. And he said, well, what's it about? I said, Exodus. Well, she doesn't know Exodus. I'm like, she knows Exodus.
That's an unfair representation. I don't remember it like that.
I'm assuming there's some parts that, got cut out, but, I know quite a bit about Exodus, but I will say there's some parts in there with all the details, that of some of the things that God shares with Moses, that it can be pretty easy to get lost in the weed of those details. But there is a lot of storytelling in Exodus, which is part of why I love the book of Exodus.
Speaking of storytelling,
yeah.
So there is this thing that me and your dad like to do. You may not be aware, but at night I like to put myself to sleep by reading the headlines. And sometimes I find a headline very intriguing and I'll read it to your father and move on. I just tell him the headline, and he'll ask me a question about I don't know. So
She doesn't read the article. She only reads the headline.
Got it. Yes.
And
everything you need to know is in the headline.
I am now immune
Exactly.
to it because I've learned.
but if you want to do some storytelling with these headlines, feel free. If not, I'm just going to I have a ton here because I actually today picked up some Spokane, Washington news. So there's a few headlines.
Oh, I'm sure there's good things in there.
There's a few headlines that stood out to me about your state. So we can talk about that.
Yeah.
All right, here's one for your dad. Scientists discover humans can connect with dogs' brains just by looking at them.
Okay. I agree.
I feel like so you agree, and that's based on your relationship with Doug?
I can absolutely look at Doug and he can understand. At times I don't have to say a word. I don't even have to make motions. He knows what I'm intending.
So you're a scientist.
No.
It says scientists discover humans can connect with dogs' brains just by...
Nope. Having just toured the Washington State Patrol forensic lab today, which was awesome.
It was.
I'm definitely not a
Which
scientist.
is one reason why our daughter lives here, because her husband works there.
Yeah.
He's literally a scientist for his job. Isn't that crazy?
You know, he is like a pastor's husband, and you are a scientist wife.
Yeah, I don't know what that means for us and for our future, but hopefully it's good.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a neat combination. There's a lot of scientists there. It was a little intimidating. But anyway, so my husband's a scientist too, because he discovered that
He's like ahead of the ball.
I do
on
not
this.
claim to be a scientist.
Well, I think-
just for the record.
Oh, and if anybody wants to follow it up, it's from Indy 100, a verified publisher. They have 372,000 followers. Legitimate. Okay, next headline. Smartphone use leads to hallucinations, detachment from reality, aggression in teens as young as 13. That's a sad one.
Is this
But
a Spokane specific news? Because
No,
that's
no.
just like across the country.
So
Yeah.
that one,
That's
that one I don't really require any additional reading. That headline I can live with just the way it is. I don't need any. I get it.
I recently read a book with some of my coworkers called The Anxious Generation, which I would highly recommend if you are...
I saw that sitting on your bookshelf.
if you're a parent with any age student or child, I highly recommend this book. It's not a Christian book, so obviously use your Bible glasses when you're reading it. But it has some really great, up-to-date, modern information about the impact of screens and tech for our youth. So yeah, I would highly recommend. It's called The Anxious Generation. I just got it on Amazon. It was super easy.
Okay, I will put the link in our podcast notes. It looks like it's The Anxious Generation. I'm looking at it right now on your bookshelf in our studios here in Spokane, Washington. The Anxious Generation by Jonathan.
We're reading it from a few feet away, so but his last name starts with an H. Jonathan H.
There you go, Jonathan H.
I
I'll
wonder if
put
they have that in audio format.
They definitely
I'd be
do.
interested in listening
Oh,
to
they
it.
do.
I'll definitely put the link in there for you guys. It's something that concerns me. I'm reading this on my smartphone right now. It says smartphone use leads to hallucinations, detachment from reality. Anyways.
Maybe you're imagining this whole podcast.
Maybe. It is kind of weird. Okay, I'm a little slap happy today, so this could get real fun.
Yeah, you guys didn't really sleep, did you? I heard you
not a whole
stayed
lot.
up late partying
No,
or
getting stuff ready.
doing laundry, packing your bags,
And then
and then
traveling.
you had to get up so early for your flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it is only 7:15 right now.
Shout out to Al Carlisle. Thank you so much for getting up at 4 o'clock this morning to drive us to the airport.
Shout out Al.
Yeah, so this is in the description of our podcast. This is a podcast with real people. So
Yeah, there you go.
You know what? We're
The
gonna
realness
have
is coming
the realness.
through. Yeah.
If we can read the Bible, so can you. That's the whole point. Okay, here's another one. Gut expert reveals surprising blue muffin trick that can show if your bowel movements are healthy. I don't know.
Blue muffin or blueberry muffin?
I don't
Just
know.
a blue
So
muffin.
interestingly, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but one of our children actually explored how colored icing on a particular cake.
That wasn't.
It wasn't a blue muffin.
It was not an intentional
not a
exploration.
good
No,
Let's say
but
that.
yeah,
That wasn't good.
it
Anyways.
demonstrated. Yeah.
Moving on. Flubbed completely. A company mistakenly sent a picture of a cartoon duck to employees when laying them off.
Honestly, for me, that would soften the blow.
As like, was there additional
No,
text?
that's the
copy?
email was, "You're laid off. Here's a picture of a duck, a cartoon duck."
So that would be very confusing from a corporate setting. Like, is somebody just joking? Is this some kind of weird joke?
All right, and this is a sign that my phone listens to me and gives me stuff that it thinks I'm interested in. So it thinks I'm now interested in Iceland. So now I get these fun things about Iceland because that's where our missing children are. Sorry, Jenna, you don't know what that's. You have to go back and listen to the previous podcast.
All right.
Okay. So 20 small fishing villages in Iceland, perfect for ocean lovers. Because I'm in Ohio and I want to go to Iceland. Okay. Let's see. Moving on.
Ocean lovers, people who love the ocean, or married couples
I
that
don't
like
know.
being near the ocean. I don't get it.
All right. Okay. Here we go. This one's kind of disturbing. Okay. And the most Ohio thing I've seen. This is from the nerdstash.com. Skyline and graders. Skyline. This is a, how do we describe that?
If you,
It's a Coney place.
you get a hot dog, you put chili, cheese, onion.
And then they expanded, so now you can put it on. You can get it 5-way, 3-way.
Pasta
You put it on top of
noodles.
pasta. Yeah,
Okay,
spaghetti
so
noodles.
Skyline and graders.
It's delicious, by the way.
What is graders for people who don't?
Ice cream parlor.
Good
Ice
ice cream,
cream,
yeah.
very good ice cream. Skyline and graders drop bizarre ice cream flavor you won't believe.
Oh, that would be exciting. Like a Coney ice cream. I don't know what it is. Coney ice cream? I would totally try that. Just for the novelty of it.
You know, I actually had to click on that one. It says it's Grader's signature French pot ice cream with Skyline chili spices and oyster crackers.
Oh no.
You know, it might taste good. If it's like a vanilla ice cream or like a base, kind of just a base standard ice cream, they put those spices in there,
No,
it could be good.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
Chili
That does
spices.
it does sound very Ohio.
It could be good, and B, how long is it going to take somebody to get it and bring a tub of Skyline chili along, and then put it on top like hot fudge?
Okay, here's your Skyline chili. You can put it on your
I would-
hot dog, on your spaghetti, and now on your
I
ice
would
cream.
totally try that. I would absolutely try that.
Okay, well that sounds like a you problem. Speaking of like state specific food, at dinner this evening I had you guys try some huckleberry preserves, which huckleberry, if you don't know, it is a regional to the Pacific Northwest berry that is only found in natural settings, so you can't farm it, which I think is so crazy. I
In
don't
the
know.
wild.
I don't know how we haven't figured it out yet. Anyways, so you guys tried it. Just in a couple words, you guys had two very different responses to this huckleberry preserves.
Delicious.
No,
Delicious.
No.
I would eat the entire jar.
no.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting was I got confused because growing up, there was a mulberry tree on the farm that I grew up on. And I wondered, are mulberries and because I hadn't tried it yet. And it's a very dark color, like a dark purple, maybe black, almost black looking. And I remember this mulberry tree having these little tiny clusters of berries that like grape clusters on steroids, the size of a ping pong ball. And they were delicious. That was my favorite. I loved picking these things and eating them.
So you thought they were
It
the
was
same
like candy.
thing.
Well, so I wondered if they were the same
So
thing.
who'd you ask?
So we asked. Well, I just Googled it. We didn't ask anybody. Just Googled it,
And who answered?
I just typed in huckleberry. I think I typed in huckleberry and mulberry or that, and it just let it populate it.
Who answered?
I don't know.
It was Gemini. It was Google's
AI.
who synthesized some information for us, and it was very funny at the time because it just said, well, they're both fruit, but they're a different color, they taste different, and they grow in different settings. Or it was something like that, and it was basically the only similarity.
I think you asked AI if they were the same
I
thing.
did. I think I tried to ask them if they were the same.
AI was trying to be
They
gentle.
are both fruit, but they're a different color. They grow in different parts of the country, and they taste very different.
Yeah, it was great. It was
That said, I like huckleberries. They're delicious. I think a huckleberry pie would be out of this world.
Now, here's the
No.
problem. They're expensive, and people literally will keep their huckleberry picking spots secret from other people. We were at a little farm over the summer, and they had some pies for sale. We're like, oh, maybe we'll pick up a pie. $60 for a huckleberry pie because
Oh,
it takes
gosh.
so many berries. I know, it's crazy.
Huh, I gotta get
Okay,
in that
I'm
business.
looking up huckleberries because, my question was, are they similar? Okay. Okay, that may be a mulberry. Oh, whatever.
Okay.
But if you look at pictures of huckleberries, look at this.
okay, you
that
try.
looks like
I
you
believe
wouldn't
you.
know. Well, this now it says it's Thomas
Well,
blackberry, but whatever. That's not a huckleberry.
That's
I thought
weird.
it was. That's what came
Yeah.
up when I searched. I was like, that looks
I
like a
believe
mulberry.
you, and unfortunately, I think it might keep you up tonight thinking about it.
Oh, I don't.
So,
care.
Jenna, do you miss Strongsville?
That's a huckleberry.
It's not Strongsville specifically. I certainly don't miss the traffic on Pearl.
Okay. There's big news in Strongsville.
Oh,
you want to hear?
geez. Yeah, I'm ready. Lay it on
Okay.
me.
We usually have some hot headlines out of Strongsville. Cleveland.com, verified publisher, 127,000 followers, legitimate. Resident concerned about, quote unquote, strange junk mail. Strongsville police blotter.
Strange junk. It's junk mail. Just throw it out.
They called the police.
That's a pretty Strongsvillian thing to do.
I just don't understand. You read these blotters sometimes, and I understand they have to be recorded because someone called the police. But what is wrong with someone calling the police about that?
Listen,
I mean, I suppose they could have seen
There's
the
more to the
scammy.
story.
But we wouldn't know because you don't click.
there's more to it. So that's just the headline. Anyways, all right. From travel, whatever that is. Or no, I see, that's just a category.
Like we said, real people, real human beings trying their best.
From The Independent, headline is, a mountain in New Zealand is now officially recognized as a human.
Okay, that's enough internet for the day. I don't even know what
I
to
have no
say about
comment.
that.
I do. Oh gosh, there's so much here. We just had
Groundhog Day?
and there's a couple things out of Ohio, and I didn't know that we had traditions for Groundhog Day. This is from Cleveland Scene, verified publisher, Concord Casimir. The name is Concord Casimir, Cleveland's pierogi eating, weather predicting cat.
I'm sorry. Cleveland's pierogi eating, weather predicting cat.
And the cat forecast a messy end to winter. But the problem is, there's another article, same day, from USA Today. Okay, so this is really legitimate. USA Today, the article is, did Buckeye Chuck see his shadow? Who the heck is Buckeye Chuck?
I don't know.
It's not Punxsutawney Phil.
No, Ohio's groundhog declares that spring is coming.
So what do we do when the expert groundhog specialists are against one another?
I don't know. Phil and Chuck
I think
just
we
don't
stop
agree.
and carefully evaluate what it is we value in life.
I
That's
value
ridiculous.
this. I
That's
value
ridiculous.
this.
Maybe this is the end times.
Since we're talking about Groundhog Day, since we're talking about Groundhog Day, Jennifer, do you have a little something you want to share about Groundhog Day in relationship to our honeymoon, even?
It's very romantic. We talked about romance last week, though.
Yeah.
Well, now you've got me intrigued. We don't have to spend 20 minutes on it.
I grew up on a farm, so I came from a farming family. And I thought it would be funny to pull a little prank on my new wife, Jennifer. We got married on the 29th of January. So we were celebrating our honeymoon over Groundhog Day, which was February 2nd. And I planned I put some effort into it before we left for our honeymoon. I bought a card and I wrote something meaningful in the card, and I bought a present and I boxed it up and I wrapped it up and put a bow on it, made it look really pretty. And then on our honeymoon on February 2nd, I was like, "Happy Groundhog Day," and I gave her the card, I gave her the present.
Very romantic.
And then I led her to believe that because we were a farming family, this was a really big holiday that we always celebrate.
Groundhog.
We always celebrate, and we get each other presents, and I made her believe for a moment that I was very let down by the fact that she didn't.
It made me feel bad.
She didn't reciprocate, hadn't planned, like she was completely oblivious to this important
she just
holiday.
didn't love you like
Yeah.
that. She didn't care that much. Wow.
Yep.
That is a very unique prank, and I've also never heard that story before.
Really?
I've never heard that story before.
It has come back to bite me once or twice. I think one other time she's kind of come, because I did it one time. I was like, "Oh, it's Groundhog Day," and then I'd never thought about it again. And then one time, at least, she's come back and she's given me a card for Groundhog Day. Yeah.
Payback is so sweet.
Which, by the way, if you try to shop for a Groundhog Day card, you're going to have difficulty. Lots of difficulty.
We're going to finish up our headlines, and Jenna's going to read the last headline. It's from her great state of Washington.
I'm scared.
Here you
Let's
go.
see.
Read it out loud.
Listen,
Be proud.
Hey, before I say
Loud
this,
and proud.
I just need you all to know Washington is a beautiful place with a lot of beautiful people. But let's see here. Okay, this proves my point. This sort of proves my point. The headline reads, "Woman builds tiny snowman." I'm so glad that's in the news. I feel like that has just proved my point. I did not know this beforehand. Washington is a beautiful place with a lot of beautiful people who build tiny snowmans.
That's
I think the plural of snowman is snowmen.
Let's just let it pass.
It's from News 8000.com. WKB something. I can't see it. Verified publisher with 40,000 followers who were excited to learn that there was a woman who built a tiny snowman in Washington.
I have to
Big
say,
news.
I question your sources. You get so excited about your sources. Ooh, they have 13 followers. 40,000 is more than I got, but it still doesn't seem like enough to be super reputable.
Well, when you think about the size of the
8 billion people on the
community,
planet. Oh, well, I guess if you look at it
If
just
it's
the
local
community,
news,
so that's
yeah.
true.
It's
Yeah.
a great community of people here. And
There you go.
speaking of community of people, let's transition now.
that was so smooth talking about the Israelites.
You're so smart. Wow. I told everybody, you really know your stuff.
I think, well, I would hope that after however many years of Bible college, I would recognize that the biggest community of people in the Bible is the Israelites.
Yeah, they kind of stand out. Yeah, they really do. So just to catch you up, we've been reading through Genesis. We've read all about what God has done to create the world and to create this beautiful land that Adam and Eve were placed in, this Garden of Eden. They sinned, they were cast out, and then from then on, God is working to restore that relationship. And we're looking for, now we don't, we are doing some spoiler alerts, and that's okay. Because while we're reading, we also want to do this experiment. We're checking to see if there is a grand storyline. So yeah, we know Moses wrote Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, most of Deuteronomy. Obviously, he didn't write about his own death. And we're checking to see, not only is there a theme in the individual writings that these authors have presented, but when we pulled it all together, we take all the books of the Bible, we call it our canon of scripture. Is there one overarching theme or story? So we will take time to do what I call the Jesus connection, connect the dots whenever we think whenever we know there's a connection that is revealed later.
Can I say the theme in one word?
Huh?
Can I say the theme, in my opinion, of the Bible in one word?
Sure.
Redemption.
Okay, that's a good word.
You know, I've got to tell you something. Talking about the overarching theme of Scripture, I'm currently serving at a church called North Church, and for the past 2 years, they've been in a series called God's Redemption Story, and they've been going through the
how
Bible. I think for the last 2 years, we're gonna
2 years,
wrap it
wow.
up in Revelation at Easter.
Wow.
Isn't that exciting?
That's cool.
But yeah, they just started at the beginning, and because they felt this heart too, people need to know that the Bible isn't just some collection of random stories. It is God's redemption story for all of humanity, and it's cohesive. Which, when you can look at it from that big picture, like what you do, encouraging people to read through the whole Bible, or whether it's a sermon series, just looking at, a couple sermons per book or one per book, it can really make a difference on people's perspective of God's big, intricate, and beautiful plan for the redemption of humanity.
And so that's my goal, is to present my case for what you just said and to let our readers decide. It's always a choice. It's an individual choice. I can't force anybody to believe that this is one cohesive story, because if we say that this is one cohesive story, then the obvious conclusion is, well, there must be a divine author that orchestrated it over thousands of years.
Right.
So I do believe if you read with us and if you follow along to these connection points that we're making, you're going to see that. So moving on, we are starting in Exodus chapter 25, which is January 29th in your daily Bible in chronological order, edited by F. LaGard Smith. If you don't have your copy yet, I do encourage you to buy one now. You can buy it on Amazon. I have a link in the podcast comments, or you can also get the audio version. I do think, Aaron, you have that on your phone, or actually the digital version.
There's no audio version.
Right. So I do a recording of a chronological version of Scripture. So you can find that on my website at Resolve to Read. That's the number 2, resolvetoread.org. And you can check out some free resources there for you. So starting in Exodus 25, we start seeing God giving these instructions. They're instructions about his dwelling place, and it's called the tabernacle. And really, it's like they're all living in tents. So they all have their own dwelling places as individual families, and now they're going to build the dwelling place for God so that God can be in the midst of them. So it's a really fancy tent. So what are some observations you have about these instructions about the tabernacle?
Well, they're detailed.
They are
Very detailed. So detailed, you would think that the details help you sort of picture the place. But for me, I sometimes get lost in them. And I find it really helpful when other people who have spent a lot more time in these passages can even draw up renditions of what renderings of what they think the tabernacle would have looked like based on the instructions. I find those super helpful. But yeah, the first thing that jumps out to me is, wow, that's a lot of details.
okay.
Well, and I think if you think about it, we talked about this a little bit in our life group too on Sunday, but if you think about it, this is a primarily oral tradition at this point. It's not written down like Moses doesn't have a notebook. To our knowledge, when God's communicating this, Moses isn't recording all these details, right? So first of all, it's a little bit supernatural that he remembers these details to this fine of a point. But if you think about it, God does not provide a blueprint for a structure. This is a structure, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about imagine the room you're sitting in right now. How would you describe it with words such that it could be recreated? So it is very detailed, but it's kind of like an audible blueprint.
Yeah.
Because there is no drawing. So all of these details are necessary. Well, I guess it didn't have to be necessary if God didn't want it this way. If God just wanted, hey, just build me a tent. Okay, fine. But these were important to God, and so they were necessary to accurately convey exactly what it was, all that detail, as Jenna was saying, that God is looking for.
So we noticed that there's a lot of detail. One of the other things that I've been making notes in my notebook Bible I have here is some observations about who is God. what is his character? Because if at the end of the day, I've decided I want to worship the God who wrote this book, I need to know and understand who he is, or I'm not really worshiping the true God. So, some of the things that we wrote down, I don't know if you remember from last week. Help me, honey. What are some of the things where God is present? God is...
I don't know what you're talking
Hey,
about.
listen to the last episode to find out.
I guess
right?
I need to go back.
One of the
to
things that I said, I don't know if this is what you're referring to. One of the things we talked about last week is it appears that God, and specifically as we were talking about him bringing the nation, the Hebrew people, out of slavery from Egypt, it appears that God is demonstrating all kinds of things. One of them is, I'm your deliverer.
Deliver, yes.
He provides food when they're thirsty, water, and then food. I fight for you. He destroys the Egyptian army that's coming after them. He leads them. I'm your lighthouse. I'm your director, right? I'm your navigator.
He's provider.
He's identifying
present.
himself. He's showing himself to be these things to this people that have been in captivity for 400 plus years, and many of them, have only ever known this captivity, and it's probable that they have felt a little bit distant from God, or at least from his character, and so he's now defining, right? He's defining. He wants these people to know, and in this case, because he's communicating it to us for us to be able to read, he wants us to know, I am this, I am this, I am this. Moses meets him. Who should I say sent me? I am.
And these are all really
I am.
positive things. He's powerful. He's there for them. He's rescuing them. So they're very positive things. So this past week, I kept doing the same thing, looking at, okay, what is this telling me about God? And I do see that because he wants this tabernacle built, specifically it says in verse 9 that I may, or in verse 8, of Exodus 25, that I may dwell in their midst. He wants to be with them.
Yeah.
And this is how it happens.
And I think the other thing that stands out, and the editor points this out as well, but I think the immense detail here demonstrates that when it comes to worshiping a holy God, like he's just other, right? He's unlike any other of the gods, lowercase g, that culturally they might have been familiar with, those sort of things. He is so unlike and so holy and so set apart that every little, and the truth is even more than these details, right? Because he's infinite, we're finite, but every little detail is important in the worship of God. It matters.
Yeah.
And it sets sort of a standard, though. It's a hard standard. It's not easy.
So we learn about God that his standards are very high.
Yeah.
Well, and flowing out of that, having you make this sanctuary so that I may dwell among my people. The first thing that he describes to them is what? The Ark of the Covenant, right?
Yeah.
Which is just this almost concentration of presence. So the whole sanctuary, the whole temple is so that they would meet with God. But then the Ark of the Covenant, though, I almost imagine it like that is where that presence emanates from,
right?
For the rest of the tabernacle, the rest of the community.
You said temple too, so this is just a forerunner.
Yes, it is.
Of the temple. It's more of a permanent dwelling. Not that we could ever build a dwelling place for God. However, we also see a lot of what God's doing here is symbolic. So, Jenna, you have your Bible. So
I do.
So, could you turn to John? We're going to make
Bible.
a Jesus connection.
I'm just saying. I also
Jenna's
have a
our
Bible.
guest today.
Yes.
in
Which
her
chapter
house.
would you like in John?
John chapter 2, 19 through 21.
2:19 through 21. Here we are. Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews then said, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking of the temple of his body.
What did we just say God's purpose was for the tabernacle? Why did he want it to exist,
to be with his people.
be with his people. So why does the temple exist? So God can be with his people. Jesus says that his body
Is that temple.
Is that temple. And the Jewish people, they understood him to be referring to the actual temple.
The physical temple there in
So
Jerusalem.
there's no minced words here about what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying his body is the temple of God. So when Jesus was there among them, God was present in Jesus. Whew. That's a big Jesus connection. And if we don't have an understanding of what the temple is, and we just read the New Testament,
that's fairly meaningless to us.
yeah, it really is. It really is. Because we talk about, oh, my body is a temple. That's not what Jesus meant.
Yes.
And I
feel
appreciate
like,
that even within this tabernacle, with all of this detail, it's this large, space. There is still, you said this concentration over Jenna, you said this concentration over the Ark of the Covenant, specifically with the cherubim and the mercy seat. But also then there's this, and covering that inside this tabernacle is the Holy of Holies.
Yes.
And
What
it's
is that?
a specific place where the ark resides and the lampstands and all these things that he specifies here. And that is so, there's a curtain there that separates it, and it's such a sacred place that only the high priest can enter as prescribed, when prescribed by God. And even then, there's a lot of risk, because there we talk about the priestly garments, things, but there's specific dress, specific attire, specific modesty that's required. And in addition, there's this idea of these bells on the garment and stuff, so that you can hear that this, because you can't see the high priest.
Yes, you need to hear that they're
You need
still
to hear
alive.
that they're still alive.
So
Because
this is a dangerous job.
God is holy. His presence is, it's dangerous to interact with the presence of God without his specific and clear direction and
And it
limitations.
has to be done perfectly.
And anything that steps outside of that ends up in death.
And they have to be consecrated. We see these words: consecrated, anointed, cleansed, all these things they have to do. Just the right clothing.
I think it's this week that we're talking about, but I mean, for example, 2 of Aaron's sons at some point after the consecration of the tabernacle offer incense. It's worship. They're worshiping God with incense, but they use the wrong fire. They don't use the fire from the temple, the dedicated special fire they're supposed to burn the incense. And what happens?
They're struck down.
Yeah, they're killed.
Because everything in the presence of God must be holy as God is holy, set apart, consecrated. Let's make the Jesus connection. You ready? Because right now I have a feeling that those who are listening are feeling a little discouraged. God is so demanding. I didn't know. We're learning that God has this high expectation for perfection. God is demanding, and these are all true statements about God.
And such perfection that since the fall of Adam and Eve has been
We've fallen
not
short.
possible for us.
Not possible. And you might be thinking, this is impossible for
Even
me.
the best, we've looked at all these things. Abraham, even the best people you can think of. Oh, Abraham, he was great. Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, but that whole lying Sarah's my sister kind of thing, that was, I mean,
Noah was-
there's a few things there.
Yeah, anyway.
So there's a point here. God is demonstrating his expectations and what is required for us to be in his presence, and it is kind of impossible in many ways. And just for one person to even dare to stand in the presence of God, you have to go through all of this just to be set apart, to be holy, to be within the holiness of God. Matthew 27. This is going to be, I couldn't decide how long of a passage, but I really wanted to set this up because this is really serious. This is the Jesus connection we're getting here. So the holiest of holies, there's a special piece of fabric that separates it off from the rest. So let's read about this Jesus connection. Matthew 27, it's a long passage, 45 to 53.
From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And at about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "This man is calling for Elijah." At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. And at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now, when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, "Truly, this man was God's son."
Did you notice anything? Like if you hadn't read about the holiest of holies divided by this special curtain, this veil, what we're reading here about the veil, the curtain being torn in two, we wouldn't understand the significance. Now that we've talked today about what the holiest of holies is, what connection are you making about the significance of what happened when Jesus was crucified on the cross?
Well, I think the most obvious part here says the curtain of the temple, which is that curtain which separates from the Holy of Holies, was torn in two from top to bottom. And just with other contextual knowledge of what Jesus's mission on the cross was, that tearing, that rending of the curtain is symbolic of the opportunity for restored relationship, to be in the presence of the holiest of holies, God, through the sacrifice of Jesus. So it's saying no longer is the presence of God set apart for this very select priest who has to do all these extra steps and do all these specific perfect things. That veil is now torn. It's no longer separated from the rest of the people. It is become approachable.
Can you imagine if you grew up as an Israelite, and let's just say you're a male Israelite, and you're in the tabernacle, but your entire life, you never see the holy, what's inside the Holy of Holies, because there's this veil, there's this curtain. The only person who ever sees it is the high priest, right? And you never see that. Can you imagine if after Christ's crucifixion, you entered the tabernacle and you can see inside to the Holy of Holies?
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. I mean,
It's just, it was laid bare.
it has been
open.
has been
The
hidden and
presence of
covered.
God is now accessible
Yeah.
through the blood of Jesus
So
Christ.
we jumped way ahead there. I mean, we're still talking about the tabernacle. The other interesting thing about the tabernacle, you were talking about, Jenna, how it's difficult sometimes. You really appreciate renderings.
Yeah.
We had a really neat experience. The
Yes.
three of us, actually. It's been a couple of years ago now.
I was 17, so 6 years ago.
Wow. And we're blessed with the opportunity, some scholarships that allowed us to be able to go to Israel and Jordan. And in Israel, as part of our trip, we were wandering, I guess it wasn't Israel, but we were wandering through the wilderness. Part of our trip was a hiking trip. And so we ended up hiking through some of what was likely the wilderness that the Hebrew nation was hiking through. We learned the value of shade and being under the shadow, right, of the wing of
Good
God.
hiking boots.
And good hiking boots. But this one day when we were walking through the wilderness, we ended up at a accurate recreation. Accurate, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Scale accurate recreation of the tabernacle. I don't know, when I say accurate, I was hesitant only because I don't think stuff was made out of bronze and gold and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the sizes of everything and it was all made as best as we can tell based on the descriptions that we have. And that was really eye-opening to be able to physically stand and see, okay, this is how big this space is. This is what it looks like when you take all, 11 curtains and this size and with these poles and these rings. And in our instance, because it was just a model, we did get to go into the Holy of Holies and see, okay, this is what this was. These were these lampstands that are described. This is potentially based on the description, what the mercy seat would look like, and the ark itself would look like, and all these things. And that was really a good connection for me, because of the same reason you said it's helpful when somebody renders it. Well, I mean, it was awesome to be able to walk into and walk through that, and like the altar. I was surprised. Well, I was surprised by how big the washing basin was. Right? I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And the altar,
yes.
and how giant the altar was, which makes sense. They're sacrificing morning and night.
Full-blown animals on there. Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought that was a neat connection. But this Holy of Holies it's limited, and it's special, and it's unapproachable for these Israelites, these Hebrews at this time.
And God has every right to be unapproachable.
Of course he does. We are temporal and finite. He is infinite, right?
Would we want a God any less than that? Would we want our God to be any less than that?
Well, then you struggle with how would you even define the word God, right? Because any less than that is, well, just not God.
Right. So I'm going to do a little fast forward button, because there's one of my favorite passages coming up. So Moses, he goes up to the mountain, and God transcribes all of this onto tablets, and then he comes down from the mountain. God already warns him. He's like, those people that you are leading, they have lost their mind. They have completely lost their mind. They have built a golden calf. They are worshiping that calf. They've gone wild. They're living just any old way that they see fit. And Aaron is leading them. Aaron, the one who is supposed to be the priest. And so Moses comes down, and it's like, when he sees it, it just hits him, and he just throws the tablets down. They break. He confronts Aaron. He's like, what did you do? He's like, well, I just threw this gold they gave me into the fire, and this calf came out of it, and then Moses is like, you're letting them run wild. What have you done? And then there's a penalty to pay, and it looks like it's all before we even get started. I mean, the people are they've seen God part the waters. They've seen the miracles of God. They've seen God defeat Pharaoh and his army and the chariots of Egypt. And yet they still don't understand what God requires.
But this is the broken record of the human heart.
Yeah.
The thing is, we could get frustrated when we're reading it because we're seeing the story. But if we stop and think about it, this is just our heart. And we get upset that the Israelites couldn't realize, wait, God just led you out of Egypt, and you're worried about what you're going to drink, or you're worried, you're complaining about food, or this or that or the other thing. And it's like they have such a short memory. But the truth is, so do we. Like, we have the same kind of short memory, and our hearts are inclined to do the same thing. Yeah, it doesn't have to be about Moses being on a mountain, but just we get distracted by just the daily life stuff, and we can go all of a sudden, and we're kind of going down a path that doesn't honor God, and it becomes a foothold, and the next thing you know, it's blown way out of proportion.
And I think one of my favorite nuances here is that a lot of the time, and I think you could argue that every time the Israelites dishonor God or are disobedient to him, there's a motivation of fear. And maybe less when they're complaining about what food they have, but there is a space of food there, right? Of fear. I'm not hungry. We had a really good dinner, but still, though, this motivation of fear makes it really, really hard for the Israelites to trust God, even if they do remember what He has done for them. The fear that they experience is what they are allowing to be the decision maker for their actions.
Fear and faith cannot coexist.
Yeah, if you're operating out of fear, and this is something I've had to learn for myself. If I'm operating out of fear, it's going to be really, really hard to operate out of trust in God. And out of trust in God, that's the only place where our obedience and our God-honoring actions in life can flow out of. It's not going to flow out of a place of fear.
Right. And God, he's ready to give up on the people because they have allowed their instincts to rule. And Moses...
Just a side note, these
Yes.
tablets that he breaks
Yeah.
are literally inscribed by the finger of God.
And he breaks them.
Yeah. Like they're written. Moses isn't up there chiseling these out for this time. They are written by it says, Scripture says that it's inscribed by the finger of God.
I think every time they've been inscribed by that's the first time. And then, and so he starts pleading with God. He's like, if your presence doesn't go with us, then we're not going to go, because how will people know that, that they are distinct? And that
People might believe that you brought them up out of Egypt to die here on the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he
And it's gonna
pleads
affect
with
your glory.
God, and I love it. It talks about how Moses, meets with God as a man speaks to a friend. I think that is really quite a neat phrase there, and then God says to Moses, "This very thing that you have spoken, I will do, for you have found favor in my sight, and I know you by name." Moses said, "Please show me your glory." And God said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you and proclaim before you my name, the all capital Lord, the Lord." Remember, we talked about that last week. What does that mean? Does anybody remember? You weren't here last week.
Well, it's the Hebrew letters, right?
Yes.
And we don't know the vowel pointings, actually. So there's a few different transliterations of what it would be. So Yahweh. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember a different... Yeah, Yahuwah, yes. So there's a couple different... because we don't... the way Hebrews were in, they write the consonants. But then for those of us who don't know Hebrew, they use vowel pointings.
So every time when you're reading and you see capital L-O-R-D...
Yes.
I want you to think this is God's name, and he gives a definition. It's I am, meaning ever living. Nobody named him. He is. I am. And it could be pronounced Yahweh, Yahuwah, Jehovah. And I think it's okay to say God's name. He says, "This is my name for all generations," as long as we're not misusing his name, of course. Right. I think that the Jewish people were so much in fear of misusing God's name, they replaced it with Lord. So he's going to explain himself to Moses. He's going to reveal his glory, and it's encapsulated somehow in his name, I am. And so he tells Moses the next day he's going to meet with him, and kind of his presence is going to pass by him. Moses is not going to see it directly, faced like that, all of his glory, because he would die if he did that. So, Jenna, would you like to read Exodus 34, 5 through 9?
Yeah. Starting in verse 5. The Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there.
Is it just the Lord?
No, Yahweh.
Okay.
Yahweh descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name, Yahweh. Yahweh passed before him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, yet by no means clearing the guilty, but visiting the iniquity on the parents upon the children, and the children's children to the 3rd and the 4th generation. And Moses quickly bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. He said, If now I have found favor in your sight, Yahweh, I pray, let Yahweh go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your inheritance.
Whoa, something new. We just learned something new about God. Let's write it on our list. What did we learn about God?
He's forgiving. He's merciful and gracious.
The Lord forgives. Yahuwah forgives. The great I am forgives. Yes, he is demanding and he expects perfection and he will judge the guilty. And he is merciful and he forgives. And he's planning something. He has set something in motion because he wants to be with us. He wants his presence to be with us. He doesn't want us to be alone and apart from him. He knows our greatest joy is to be in his presence. And for those who want to be in God's presence, who long to be with this God that we're learning about in Exodus, he has made a way. He has made a way for you, a way for me, and that's through Jesus Christ. When Jesus died on the cross, paying the penalty, the atonement for our sin, the veil was torn in two. We were able to access the presence of God through the blood of Christ. And now he calls to us to make that decision to accept his forgiveness. And it's as simple as faith and turning to him. So that is my prayer for you today. Thank you so much, Jenna, for joining us. I hope it was a good experience.
Yeah, it was fun. It was
Good.
a lot of fun, yeah.
You're smart. You said things in smarter words than I say.
Oh,
so.
I don't know. It's the trickle-down effect, right?
Yeah.
Listen to people smarter than me. I spit out some of the smart words they say.
So progressively smarter. So you are from
Probably.
us progressively smarter.
I don't know if that's true. I just don't know if that's true.
Well, both of you, thank you so much for reading with me, and for all of you out there, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.